Welcome back to the Bottom Line Podcast. Once again, in a new location with Ben Willie and JD DeRazio. Ben, we finally might have the permanent solution in the dorm. It was just right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of in front of us. I think we talked about recording here like way back, like when we were first starting this whole thing. And then we were thinking of ideas, and my roommate moved out recently. So it kind of opened the opportunity of not bothering anyone and still being able to record our thing without,
I mean, it's a pretty unique setup. I mean, we're rocking with the mic in the dresser,
the empty dresser,
dresser.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're getting unique here. But with the football season being over, we've been talking about for a while. We want to start introducing some more sports into the show.
Yeah.
And today we're rocking with our first ever Soul Basketball show. It should be fun.
Yeah.
We don't really talk basketball a whole lot. Me and you personally. So I'm kind of excited to hear what some of your takes are about what we're talking about. We made a whole tier list, updated graphics, bro. I mean, we went all in today.
Yeah, no, I thought we were sitting here trying to brainstorm ideas for what we wanted to do this week. And we're kind of in that in between where I thought about touching football again. And we're kind of in that in between where teams are not really doing anything yet. And it's kind of like the off-season preview. But I mean, basketball is right after the All-Star break. Action kicked back off, last night? Yeah, last night. So it's a perfect time to talk basketball. We got about 30 games left in the year.
And real quick, I mean, I'm loving the wardrobe selection. I'm rocking my Tar Heels. Are you hopping on the Tar Heel train?
No, so I am still go Pirates, haul in, as they would say in New Jersey. I'm still haul in, but I like this shirt. I got a couple of shirts.
I mean, you can't beat the Carolina blue.
No, I mean it's a good look. I mean, who doesn't love the Carolina blue? And when you're sports fans like us, you just rep some teams. Even if you're not a fan, you just love what they're doing.
So why don't you tell the people what the plan is for today's show, how we're going to be talking about basketball? We kind of have a little bit of a unique setup, at least in terms of the show.
Yeah, so I think we're going to try to break it down into more of a simplistic way for maybe some fans that aren't, super big basketball fans. Because a lot of times as a basketball, casual, the first thing you do in any sports is you go to the standings. You go to the straight up records, and that's where you say, hey, this team's at the top of the standings. Oh, they're the best team. Well, that's not always the case. And we see that in football and stuff, but obviously a more casual fan would argue that. So we kind of broke it down into the classic, the modern day, what we would call tier list. And we started from tier 1, tier 2. I think we have tier 5 is the lowest tier we have. The stinkers is where we're going to call it. We'll get to those in a bit, but I think we're going to start from the top down so we can.
Yeah. And I think we're going to notice this is we're not going purely off standings. Obviously, I think the standings are a good guideline, but we're going to have some teams that maybe are a bit lower that we're still high on. Some teams that are higher that we think may be a little bit pretenders, that whole rigmarole. So,
yeah,
I mean, let's just go right into it. Tier 1, the contenders.
Yeah.
So we got the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Bucks for starters. It kills me that we have your favorite NBA team here in tier 1, but I mean, they deserve it. They've been playing some good ball. I mean, let's start with the Clippers because that's your team.
Yeah.
I mean, what's been your thoughts on their season so far? You see on the screen 36-18.
Yeah.
Start off a little bit slow, but really found their groove, especially recently.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I can even say they're in that tier 1 is kind of a crazy thing to think about. Is you would have told me coming into the season that coming out of the All-Star break, they'd be one of the 4 best teams in basketball. I would be jumping with joy, especially considering how they started. As you talked about, I think at one point their worst record was 3-8 or 3-9. They had a shaky start, and it really wasn't pretty until about November, December, and ever since December they've been red hot. And they're kind of starting to figure out their identity. This James Harden trade is looking better and better as things are coming along. Russ is accepting his role off the bench. Kawhi and PG are healthy.
It's interesting because you see a lot of times, at least in the past few seasons, where they try to build these super teams with ball dominant players. Pretty much historically, it's failed every single time. But the Clippers, even in regular season, we've seen it fail. But the Clippers have really just found a way to allow guys to finally accept these new roles. And I think I'm probably going to say the words right out of your mouth. I think that really goes to one man only. That's Ty Lue.
Yeah.
Who's doing a phenomenal job because the amount of personalities on this team for starters, so many different pieces, and they're really just starting to all flow together very well. So the question is going to be, can it finally translate to postseason success? Because a lot of these guys outside of Kawhi Leonard, that's kind of been the only gripe of their careers. And I mean, I'll say this, seeing this even as a non-Clippers fan, they could find a way to do it all together where Russ, Harden, Paul George all win their first ring together on the same team.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty poetic.
Yeah. I mean, like you talked about, it all comes down to one guy. And I think people have kind of gotten a bad rap about Ty Lue from those LeBron days and the Cavs day, but like people really forget how good of a coach Ty Lue is. I mean, that guy can coach basketball. And like you talked about, the fact that he's been able to take all these personalities, all these ball dominant players and turn them into a one meshed unit. You know what I mean? You've seen guys like Russell Westbrook. He's been a starter his whole career. He's been the main ball handler his whole career.
And you still have some promising young pieces. These are players that are hoping that we would acquire in the trade that we got. You think of, I'm blanking on the names. Young players on the Clippers.
Terrence Mann. You got a guy like Terrence Mann, a guy like Amir Coffey, who's come out of nowhere and has been a piece off the bench for them. Even a guy like Norman Powell.
Terrence Ross was there. I was like, I know it's not Ross. I had the Terrence. I was like, it's not Terrence Ross. He's a vet. But yeah, Terrence Mann. That was a guy I thought for sure the Sixers would get in a Harden trade. The Clippers found a way to hold on to him.
Yeah.
So you have like a great asset of proven players. Then you have great young players coming off the bench. It's the makings of a complete team. It really is.
Yeah, they got the 6th man of the year candidate right now, and Norman Powell putting up almost 20 a game off the bench.
So then you got the Bucks, Nuggets, and Celtics. Let's just stick to the right side of the screen because the Bucks are a really interesting story right now. We were honestly debating
polarizing
if they belonged on tier 1 right now, and we both came to the conclusion that they do. But ever since my main, I guess a coach we're both familiar with, Doc Rivers came in, things have really just gone south.
Right.
I think they're 3-7 in the Doc Rivers era. I want to say, but I think me and you both agreed just the potential and the talent that we've seen from this crew. Even if Doc Rivers can just get a somewhat decent game plan going, I mean they can compete with the best of them. I still think it's a stretch to knock him out and give a little bit of credit to Doc Rivers. It's hard to take over a team mid-season that has that high of expectations.
Yeah.
Sure, he could be doing a better job, but I think it's more than just Doc right now. I don't think it's fair to pin all the blame on him.
No.
The players, they got to adapt as well. It's a little bit of everything, but I think we both agree if the Bucks can just figure it all out by the end of the regular season, they're still one of the most dangerous teams in all the NBA.
I mean, yeah, if you look at their roster top to bottom, they're one of the best in the league. I mean, they have the talent. You start with the superstars. I mean, the obvious 2 names are Dame and Giannis, 2 of probably the 15 best players in basketball.
Yep.
Not many teams can say that. And that alone is a scary sight. And then you have a guy like Chris Middleton, who was the number 2 option for many years and was a really good number 2 option at that. And now he's the 3rd option. And oh my gosh, that might be the best 3rd option in basketball. I mean,
this was a guy who's a borderline all-star starter a few years ago, who's now your 3rd option coming off the bench, but your third option as a scorer. I mean, that's lethal.
Yeah, I mean, and Chris Middleton he's a great player. He's a great player on both ends of the floor. And then you have guys that are just playing their roles for that Bucks team. I don't think we put enough emphasis on Brook Lopez for what he's done for that team.
Year in, year out, just dependable.
Reliable. Consistency. Just a lot of guys on that team that can get it done. And they're built from the top down. They're just they're a well-oiled machine. Championship DNA. I know they didn't win a championship, but they've had some deep runs in the playoffs the past couple of years. And I think, like you said, if they find their stride, there's the ceiling is endless for this team.
So I think we're both in agreement with the Clips or Bucks, even though they're in the same tier. I think we're both in agreement the Celtics and Nuggets are probably maybe just like a half step up.
Yeah, some places I saw ESPN had the Celtics in a tier of their own, which is kind of crazy. But I mean, right now, these are probably the 2 best. Not the 2 best, but at least the 2 scariest.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's save the champs for last. Let's talk about the Nuggets because just in terms of roster personnel from your starter all the way down to the bench, I think the Celtics are probably the most complete unit.
Yeah,
in terms of starting lineup and bench depth. But they're basically like a mini all-star team where you have all these top lethal scorers: Porzingis, Brown, Tatum. So many guys. They're lethal. They play great offense, good defense. The question that's always been for the Celtics: can it translate to a championship?
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to have to find out.
Yeah, they've been close. I think the one thing we forget about this Celtics team is just 2 years ago, I think they were up 2-0 in the finals, or they were up 2-1 in the finals. This was a team that not only made the finals, but they were the favorites going into that final series against the Warriors, and it kind of slipped away from them. And even last year, they went to they were up 3-2, or they were down 3-2 against Miami, had a miraculous game, and they had Game 7 at their home court.
Game 7 at home, and they just fell apart.
Yeah, they crumbled at their own stage.
That game was never really ultimately competitive for the most part.
And that's the thing is, the opportunities have been there, and this team has consistently. One thing that I think the Celtics don't get enough credit for is their ability to retool every year. Not only have they've kept their core with the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Browns, but we've seen many renditions of this Celtics team. Now the newest version is the the Kristaps team, and we're seeing even guys like Derek White kind of take an extended role. I mean, he was kind of the playoff hero last year, but he's kind of taken this extended role. But people forget Al Horford,
Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I mean, these guys were running the team for years. I mean, but it's
Grant Williams even for a few years.
Perfect examples. They just keep re-innovating this team. So I mean, the Celtics are the top dogs right now. They're the team to beat, and honestly, I think it's warranted. I mean, that there's no doubt in my mind that this team is the best team in basketball when they're at their best.
I mean, if you ask any GM player in the team of who's probably the team you want to play the least for a championship, it's probably the Celtics. I mean,
and props to their coaching staff too, because I know there was some drama with the coaching staff with Missoula and all that, and then that whole thing fell through. Props to this coaching staff, which I believe is a first-year coaching staff. Completely no slip-ups. I mean, this team has been the best team since the start of the year. Since day one, they've been at the top of everyone's power.
And credit Brad Lidge. A lot of people forget about Brad Lidge, who's still kind of just being the puppet master, pulling all the strings. A lot of people remember as the great head coach he was. He took this front office role, and he has just not lost a step for this being his first still few years as the head guy of the front office. Doing a great job with some of these pieces he pulled. I mean, it's a scary lineup. Yeah, where's the weak spot in the Celtics? There isn't one.
Well, your best bet to beat them is you're gonna have to hope that you can force their second and third options to crumble, and that was the Heat game plan. We saw it last year when they got Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown tendency to just force him to go left. He gets mocked all the time on social media, whereas he's so tendency just to go with his right hand dominance.
Yeah.
Or there's clips online just him with like low lights of him trying to do anything with his left hand. Yeah. And he got exposed for it on the big stage.
Yeah.
But let's see what happens. Then that just leaves the Nuggets, who are the defending champs, which interesting.
That's all you really got to say. But yeah, they're the defending champions.
They're the defending champs because right now they're the fourth team in the West. We both looked at each other like the Nuggets are the best team in the West.
They're the Nuggets. They're the team to beat. If the Nuggets and let's use this as a funny example. If the Nuggets were to play the Timberwolves in a 7-game series right now, I'm taking the Nuggets. Like the Nuggets are the best. They're the best team in the West. The only, not to say that a team like the Clippers or a team like the Timberwolves or anything like that can't beat them, because they can. But the Nuggets are still the team to beat. I mean, they're defending champions for a reason. They still
talk about the Celtics. The Celtics and Nuggets have very similar roster builds in terms of they have star power but great depth.
Yeah.
The Nuggets just win the games they're supposed to win, and the Celtics don't. That's like in terms of rosters, I feel like they match up very well. The Nuggets just have that track record of proving it right on the big stage. The Celtics, we have not seen that from them.
Well, I will say the Nuggets before last year, they had those demons.
Yeah.
Last year was kind of I don't want to say the rare outlier, because I guess it kind of was. I mean, it is the rare outlier because the Nuggets were known as one of those teams that always had a good regular season and then they couldn't translate to the playoffs. Now, from what we know last year, you would beg to say, oh, it's gonna, they've gotten over that hump, but who's to say? I mean, maybe it was a one-off. You never know. So I mean, but the honest truth is they're probably still the best team in the West. I mean, just the roster. MPG, he's continuing to develop. He gets better year in, year out. Michael Porter Jr., you mean?
Yeah. MPJ. MPJ, Porter Jr. He gets better year in, year out. You got Jokic, who's just
the best player in basketball still.
Which is just ironic, just because when that guy retires, we're never going to hear from him ever again. That guy could not care less about his NBA career, but he's by far, he can do it all. Yeah, at his size, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. Then you got their
Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray, yes, another great lethal point guard who just accompanies Jokic so well. I mean, they're just a 1-2 punch. They culminate each other's game so beautifully. Then you got pieces like Aaron Gordon. I mean, they just, again, top to bottom.
I think one thing we don't give enough credit to Jamal Murray was he was kind of the missing piece in that championship team. We saw it in the bubble of how electric he was. It was kind of him and Jokic didn't mesh. They kind of crumbled on the big stage. And then they had that year where he didn't play. And they're like, man, this team is just one piece away. This guy comes back from a very bad injury, lights it up. And he was kind of the guy in the playoff run last year. People forget, not that Jokic, I mean, Jokic was Jokic, but
you need a proper closer. As much as Jokic is, when you have like that 1 minute left and you need like one shot.
Yeah.
To be able to have a guy like
Jamal
Murray to do that. I mean, that's what Jokic was missing piece was. He needed a guy where when he could count on somebody, pass him to make an open shot. That's what Jamal Murray did time in, time out. He's a proper closer. Yeah. Game's on the line, he can make those big shots.
Yeah, it's the modern NBA. You need a good guard. And not that guys weren't being good guards, but you need a real superstar number 2 option.
So we got the Celtics, Nuggets, Clippers, and Bucks as our top 4. So we're going to jump to our second tier, the hopefuls. So these are teams that, if you look at the standings and just how they've been playing so far, I mean, they're right up there with the best of them, but they just have a few missing elements that are just slightly holding them back. But I think we both agree if any one of these teams went the distance, it wouldn't be super shocking.
No.
So that's what we have with these teams. I will want to say, when we talk about the Sixers, there is an asterisk for the Sixers because the health of Joel Embiid is dependent on everything. We can start with the Sixers if we want, since we're already talking about him. Because without Joel Embiid, this team might be down another tier, perhaps even 2 tiers. Yeah. Ever since Joel Embiid's been out, I think they're 3-8, something like that. Very, very bad.
Oh, man.
I mean, Joel Embiid's just the key to that entire offense. I was hoping that Maxey and Harris could kind of handle that load a bit more. So far, they haven't. They had a few pieces at the deadline, but he'll be the most significant one. We'll see what those pieces he can do.
Kyle Lowry looked good yesterday.
Lowry, that was another good piece. They got rid of Patrick Bev and added Kyle Lowry. That kind of started a little bit of tension on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, Pat Bev was a little upset. Pat Bev started tension with everybody. Did you see his back and forth with JJ Redick?
I did.
About Doc Rivers? I mean, that was explosive.
Yeah, I mean, hey, honestly, I didn't look too much into it. I know the general basis was that JJ kind of critiqued Doc Rivers, and I think it was totally warranted.
I agree.
Based off the way Doc's coaching career.
I think it was just more Pat Bev as a current player for Doc Rivers trying to defend his coach.
Right.
I mean, I see both sides there.
No, I do too. I mean, I get JJ's side. I think his point is that Doc's had these chances over and over again, and it's always excuses. It's always, hey, this guy did it, and it's never me. Yep. And that's kind of where he's at now. He's even saying, "Oh, well, you know, it's hard to coach a team in the middle." He
said in a recent interview to a front office, "Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
He said that publicly in an interview, like, "Oh man, what are you doing?"
Yeah, no, it's just not a good look. But you know, props to Pat Bev for sticking up for his coach, being that. But I don't know why he threw JJ Redick under the bus. It was kind of weird. But
yeah, it was weird. But back to the Sixers. I mean, without Embiid, this team's going nowhere. We've seen it. But when Embiid's healthy, they definitely have a chance. But the thing with the Sixers, it kills me as a fan. I mean, we're just second round exit year in, year out. I mean, it's been the process. Yeah. I mean, when is the process complete? And we're running out of time. The prime of a big man, especially, is very short, just because of how much wear and tear are on those bodies. How many injuries you see to big men in the NBA?
Yeah, they don't play late. He ain't playing year 23 LeBron style.
Yes, I mean they're running out of time. So the Sixers, if Joel Embiid's healthy, they have a shot. But again, I just think the Sixers have a clear drop from those 4 teams we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean they're one of those teams that when their best player's out, you know, all crap hits the fan. I mean, they're just, you know, you could say the same thing about a lot of these tier 1 teams. I mean, it really is a league of, especially when you only have 5 guys on the court at once.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a superstar driven league.
Yeah, and it really is. You just need your top guys. I mean, you imagine the conversations we'd be having about the Nuggets if Jokic wasn't out there? I mean, it goes.
The Bucks without Giannis?
Exactly. I mean, it just goes both ways. So, I mean, he really is. And people, he was the rating MVP. I mean, quite literally, he won the award that says he is the most valuable player out of any player in the league. I mean, that's all you need to say. But yeah, I think the Sixers team has the making if Embiid's out there. I think Maxey's kind of developed into that great second option that Sixers fans kind of hoped he would. And then I think you just need to see a little bit more out of your 3 to 5 options. I think that's been the missing piece for the Sixers team, maybe, is, you know, a guy like, you know, Buddy Hield to really step up. They need a couple, you know, shooters, because Tobias Harris has kind of taken a couple steps back, in my opinion.
I agree. I would agree.
What he used to be. So I don't know. That's going to be the missing piece for me, is if 3 to 5 can get it done. Yeah,
that's 100%. That's what's come out in the playoffs. I mean, you see it all the time in the playoffs, where once those bench units come in, you kind of have the bench players rotate in with the stars. That's where you usually see a lot of these runs, especially in the playoffs, where once the bench players get incorporated, that's where the big runs are happening. That's where you win and lose ball games. I mean, basketball, more than any other sport, is a game of runs.
Yeah, no, it really is.
So that's what's going on. Let's talk about the Timberwolves, which I don't know about you, for me has been probably the biggest shock of the year.
Oh, easily
in the NBA. Opinion. They're the number 1 team in the Western Conference. I don't really see anyone ever talking about them on ESPN. Nothing.
No,
you don't see the Timberwolves everywhere, and they're the number 1 team in the West. And we both said near of us really consider them to be a top dog. But if you look at all the numbers, they passed the eye test there.
It's weird. Here's what I noticed about the Timberwolves is I saw their roster last year, and it was kind of the first year into that new system where what was last year's Ant's rookie year? I don't know.
Second year.
So it was, you know, Anthony Edwards was still kind of adjusting to the league. I think it was their first year with Gobert and this whole double Gobert cat thing. They were still trying to figure it out. And then they went to the playoffs and they played the Nuggets. They won the play-in, and then they played the Nuggets first round. And surprisingly, they gave the Nuggets a decent run. I don't know if you remember that series at all.
I think what,
I think
6?
I think they won 2 games in that series. So like people forget this Timberwolves team was competitive last year, and they went to the offseason, they retooled, and I think the big thing is just everyone got better.
Yep.
They got better as a team, and not only that, but they're really buying into the system. And we're seeing that with teams like the Thunder, which we will talk about in a second. We're noticing these teams that maybe they don't have the superstar talent of these other teams, but they have some good, pretty dang good players.
That's a great point I was about to go to. For most of these teams, when you look at like the top stat core categories, it's usually the same guy in at least 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
In all the major stat card categories, it's a different player. Points, Anthony Edwards. Rebounds, Rudy Gobert. Assists, Mike Conley. We didn't even mention Karl-Anthony Towns in any of those.
Yeah.
So I think they have such a more balanced approach to their scheme, which we don't really see for most of these other teams. Usually there's that dominant 1A, 1B, but I mean, on any given night, Edwards might be your main guy. It might be Gobert. It could be
Cat. That's the thing is they bought it into the system. And I mean, we see teams like this that are kind of more deep teams, but and that's what I'm saying. Like this team really bought into what they're trying to do here. And I mean, this team can easily get it done. I mean, like I said, it's a team that we don't talk about, but they have some good players. I mean, people forget how good, Karl-Anthony Towns is at basketball. And he's not even the leading stat guy. Anthony Edwards has blossomed into the superstar they thought he would. And then a guy like Rudy Gobert is the perfect defensive anchor that you can ask for your team.
They got a veteran presence of Mike Conley to just control.
Who they just re-signed too for another 2 years.
To just control the anchor and just make sure the ship doesn't go sinking.
Yeah, I mean, this is a core they can continue to build on because Anthony Edwards, I think, just signed his extension. I think they're all locked up for a couple of years. And I mean, to be honest, most of these guys will continue to get better. I mean, Anthony Edwards will get better and Cat will probably get better. And then you just keep the veteran presence of Gobert and Mike Conley, and all of a sudden you got yourself a team. I mean, it's
interesting what they do in the postseason. This will be their first postseason with proper expectations.
Yeah, like a first real postseason.
So I'm curious for them, and I'm curious to see what they can do because, like I said, talking about they have all the makings of.
I think the curious thing for me is going to be once they run into a powerhouse. Like I think they could probably win that first. If they stay in the top 2 of the West, they'll probably win that first series against one of the play-in teams. But like, what happens when they run into a team like the Suns or a team like the Nuggets, the Clippers? What's going to happen? So I'm curious.
And I think the Thunder, who's also in this tier, is a very similar story. I feel like we'd agree.
Yeah.
Where they really just fallen off the map. What's really more impressive about the Thunder is compared to the Timberwolves, they've had that core for a couple of years. The Thunder are still so young.
I think they're still the youngest team in the league.
They're the youngest team in the league, and they're already number 2, number 3 in the West. They've been kind of on the seesaw with the Clippers. Either way, I mean, with the amount of youth on this team, usually you'd expect maybe a couple more years for them to be where they are now. But I mean, Shai Gilgeous, let's just start there because I mean,
I'm familiar with the guy.
Very, very similar to Anthony Edwards, but I think he's a next tier up. We're going to be having a bit more talk about Shai Gilgeous at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But he is just a phenomenal prospect. I mean, not even a prospect. He's a full-blown star. All-star star this year.
Yeah, he's a superstar. He's the top 3, top 5 MVP.
31 points a game.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy.
He's in the MVP race, and I'm quite familiar with the guy. I mean, people forget my Los Angeles Clippers drafted the guy. I watched him play a year in Los Angeles, and you could see from the early stages.
Again, one of those rare win-win trades.
Yeah, it really was. But I mean, you could kind of see the early stages of his game where he's a very diverse. He could just really. He's kind of like the modern. I always think of him and Tyrese Halliburton being in a similar category where they can really get it done in all 3 levels of the stat sheet. For me, what separated Shai was his ability to really develop as a scorer. I think he started in the early stage of his career kind of putting up high-end teens, low 20s, and then the past year or 2, he's kind of just exploded on the scoring end, and he's doing it pretty efficiently too. And I think he's developed a more consistent 3-ball, and he's really using his size to his advantage once he does get to the rack. And he's kind of been the head man for this Thunder team, but really their entire roster is just loaded. I mean, and it's not superstar talent, but it's just super depth guys.
Chet Holmgren, the second guy that comes to mind. This is still his rookie year. Most people forget about this. He got hurt.
His true rookie
year. This is his first proper true year in the NBA. And I mean, he's just blossoming before our very eyes, almost averaging 17 points a game, 8 rebounds. For his first year, he's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, and that guy, what's his name? Jalen Williams,
who's truly just loaded. He's just a 5-tool player. That's really what he is. He can defend, he can shoot, he can pass, he can rebound. He can guard any position 1 through 4, maybe not the center, but any position 1 through 4. And that's the key to having these good rosters. You have your top scorers, your top rebounds. Then you see those utility guys that can just do a little bit of everything. Yeah, and that's what Jalen Williams is.
No, I mean they really done this whole rebuild from top to bottom. I mean they started from the ground up with this rebuild, completely blew it up, traded away Russ and all the pieces, Russ, Carmelo, and KD back in the day, Harden. They blew up the whole Thunder team. I mean, there's not a. I don't even think there's a single guy in this team.
I think Jay Gilgeous is the veteran of this team. Just shows the youth.
But that's what I mean. There's not a single guy on that team that was there 5 years ago, and they've built it from the ground up. And the scary part is that they're not done. They still have picks until about 2030.
Cap space is phenomenal. Yeah, everyone's still on young contracts.
Half of them are my Clippers picks. I mean, they are loaded on picks completely, and it really does never end for this team, and they're only going to get better. So, I mean, props to this Thunder team. I think we're just going to keep seeing them be built more and more into a dynasty. I'm also curious. One thing, that's a random thought. What starts happening in the offseason with this team? A guy. Do
they go for like a mini star hunter? Or do they keep going for youth?
So that's what I mean. Yeah. Does this become like a target destination for some of these superstar players? Man, I want to go play with all this young talent that's blossoming. Maybe you see a guy like I don't even know. Just some of these high end superstars that want to go play for a team like that. Enjoy the youth. So I don't know.
It's a great point. It's a great point. I mean, Thunder again, right up there with the best of them. I got you, bro. And yeah, so that leaves the Cavs and the Suns. So let's talk about the Cavs first. For the Cavs, I just don't know what it is. I'm just not sold. They passed the eye test. They have the record. They have the stats. Donovan Mitchell again, averaging 30 points a game.
The most consistent, underrated superstar in the NBA. I mean, I feel like this guy every year, back to his Jazz days, was putting up 20, 27 plus a year every single year, and like everyone's just like, okay, like nice, because the problem is Donovan Mitchell has never had playoff success.
No,
and you look at this whole roster, it's complete. You got a guy like Darius Garland who's been there for a couple years, even Evan Mobley who's been a younger guy that's blossomed, a guy like Jared Allen who has always been one of the better underappreciated bigs in the league, but none of these guys have won. Have any of them even won a notable playoff series? I mean, I think Donovan Mitchell probably won one or two, maybe back in Utah, but like no big playoff steps. I mean, they just kind of got by. So I mean, that's been the story of these teams: is can they get it done on the big stage? And that's like the second year. I mean, the Cavs had a good year last year, and it was the same story. I just wonder if this team can get it done, and not to say that they won't or can't, but yeah, they're such a confusing team for me to understand.
They're unproven. I think that's the word we're looking for. They're unproven. Quite frankly, I really don't have a whole lot more to add. You kind of so needed to be said.
No, and it's a perfect segue for me too to the Suns, because I think it's the opposite. It's the complete opposite, where you look at them and the record doesn't show it, but man, is this team proven? I mean, they're proven from top to bottom. You got a guy like Kevin Durant, who we don't even gotta. I mean, I don't gotta say much about Kevin Durant. You know who he is, as they would say. And then a guy like Devin Booker, who's consistently got it done on the highest level. They've won playoff series. They went to the what?
Health is going to be the big thing for the Suns.
Yeah, it is, and that's been the.
I mean, except for any team, but especially the Suns, because they've been battling health all year long with their third pillar, Bradley Beal, who's really still not fully healthy at all yet. So we haven't even seen the Suns to their fullest potential, and they're still 33-23. Yeah, and they have not gone over the hump yet in terms of a championship with this core. But I mean, each of these guys individually have proven it on their own.
Well, they were in the finals.
They were in the finals, but they haven't won that. They haven't won the chip yet.
No, and no one really cares unless you win the chip. So I mean, this might be the last year with this.
I mean, they're running out of time because Beal. I mean, he's already starting to age. You're going to get into contract talk. It's hard to keep these 3-4 superstar teams together for long. Usually, you don't see it for like 3, 4, 5 years max. Is usually how long you see these like super teams together. 5 years is really push. It's really even. I mean, look at the Nets. I mean, as soon as it started, it was crumbling down before.
I mean, the Clippers are in the same situation. I know back to my own team. I mean, people kind of said that when you hit these situations, a team like the Clippers or even like the Lakers right now going through it, where you only got a couple years and you're kind of on that last year where it's like, hey, it's got to happen now or we're done. I mean, that's and even if you're like, oh, well, why are you getting rid of these guys? Because you just don't have that time. You just don't.
So that's going to do it for hopefuls here. I guess we'll probably start picking up the pace a little bit with these ones. There's still a few interesting storylines here, but I think these are teams where I'd be pretty shocked if they won the championship. But
that's my favorite category, though.
No, because there's so many different stories. Like the Pelicans story is so different from the Lakers.
Well, okay. I mean, let's explain this category because I wanted to name it. We thought of a couple names. The one name I was thinking about doing was the close but no cigar.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a good way to describe it is, man, are these teams right there? So this is what we decided on. They're there, but not quite. So they're on the cusp. You know, it'd be kind of a long shot for any of these teams to get it done. I think we're seeing a balance of everything. And what makes it so unique about this category is you have a couple of these teams that are there, but not quite for different reasons.
Yep.
And a team like, I think a team like the Pacers is a good way to start because the reason they're not there yet is they're just not developed.
No.
I mean, they're just young. They're young, unproven. I mean, this is Tyrese Halliburton's kind of coming out party this year, and we're seeing a guy like,
and they're starting to invest now though. They see the
Right.
success and they pick up a guy in Siakam in the on the trade deadline.
Right.
So they're already starting to invest, saying, okay, maybe we finally got something. Because the Pacers, they're kind of stuck in that no man's land, which is the worst place to be in sports for so many years. They pick up Tyrese, they trade for Siakam. We're starting to see them finally start investing big time into their team, which we haven't really seen for the Pacers for a while. And there's just something about the Pacers branding. I'm not sure what it is, but it's just such a very likable franchise, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves the Pacers. They're one of the more historic franchises in basketball. I think everyone kind of ties it back to the Reggie Miller days or even the early 2000s with the Jermaine O'Neal Pacers and those guys. But, I mean, the Pacers are a fun team. But then you got a team, I mean, let's go to the other side of the spectrum. A team like the Golden State Warriors, who are there but not quite, but the complete opposite reason. They are on the back end.
Decline, kind of like you think of I'm thinking like an English class, the rising action, the climax, which we saw. Now it's kind of the falling action where you still see the shades and pieces of what once was
the Warriors dynasty.
It's just not there to its fullest extent. I mean, Curry, he's still playing some of his best basketball of his career, but I think it's more the other pieces, specifically Klay Thompson's really taking a step back.
Draymond Green's even taking a step back.
Draymond Green's taking a step back. You have these pieces like Andrew Wiggins, which they've been good pieces, but they never really blossomed to their fullest potential.
And Chris Paul's been hurt.
That's a great point. I honestly forgot Chris Paul was on the Warriors until you said that. So, I mean, if they can get healthy, they have a chance. I mean, if you have the Warriors in a 5-game, 7-game series, you're not going to rule them out because Curry can go God mode any day. Klay Thompson, I mean, for how bad of a year, he still had some games where he's shown his flashes. I mean, they saw the potential to hang with the best of them, but they've really taken a step back.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that like this team 2 years ago was NBA champions, and somehow last year we started to kind of see the decline of it. I think they were an early exit in the playoffs. I don't exactly remember, but we started to see the decline, and then this year it's been a full, collapse. I mean, this Warriors team has actually started to find their identity recently. Right into the All-Star break was kind of their best basketball they've played this whole year, and I'm wondering to see how they kind of come out of this. The first, I feel like the first 5 games out of the All-Star break can kind of tell you a lot about a team.
Yep, I agree.
And I think we're going to see a lot of this Golden State team of maybe they can get up in that tier 2. I mean, they're kind of one of those. I'd say there's maybe 3 or 4 teams on this list that can go up or down, and the Warriors are definitely one of them.
Let's just jump up to the Lakers, because I think it's a very similar story. This is a team that won a championship 4 years ago now, but again, hang on to that same core that just keeps continuing to age and just continue. And I think the Lakers even more so than the Warriors, because the Lakers were at the top of the West for like 1 or 2 years, but this is now like their 3rd year in a row now. They're just kind of been hanging in that playing range.
Well, I mean,
but when you have arguably the greatest player of all time on your team, you have a chance to win any playoff series.
Well, look what they did last year. I mean, last year they came out of the play-in.
Western Conference Finals. I think a lot of people forget they were one of the 4 main teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, they were really good last year. They found their stride at the end of the year. Guys like D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura kind of woke up in the playoffs. I mean, we all know the legendary Austin Reeves, kind of coming out party last year. But this team is still proven. They still have the talent to do it. I question, can they get it done? I mean, especially on the coaching end of it. I think did they get a new coach? Yeah, I think they have a new coach this year.
The Lakers?
Yeah.
No, they're still rocking.
Darvin Ham? Is it still Ham?
Okay. They're still rocking with Ham, but this is probably gonna be his last. I mean, it's up to LeBron. It's where Lebron wants, if we're just being honest.
Le GM.
Le GM. But again, I mean, we'll keep it short. But when you got LeBron on your team, you're never gonna roll out.
That's all you got to say. You still have LeBron James on your team. You can't count the guy out. He's the 2nd greatest basketball player of all time, and that's all you got to say.
I think the Heat and the Mavericks, we kind of talk about them next. I feel like they're very similar in terms of roster assemble. I think the Heat have shown more playoff success. But I mean, these are a lot more. Maybe not just a little bit more, a lot more. But I mean, 2 teams with star power combined with young player leadership.
Yeah.
They're just trying to find the hump. For the Mavericks, this is the first proper season of the Kyrie and Luka combo. Yeah. They had Kyrie in the trade deadline.
I think it's gone pretty well.
I think it's gone pretty well for the most part. I think losing Jalen Brunson definitely hurt. A report came out yesterday. He was only looking for like $50 million a year, and they didn't want to do it. Yeah, look what Jalen Brunson's become, which ironically on the next we can also talk about. But the Mavericks and the Heat, just great rosters. I mean, the Heat, this has been their formula. They're like a 6, 7, 8 seed. Then you just run the table in the playoffs.
Yeah,
every year it just seems like that's what they do for the past few years. Have not been able to get over that final hump, but all those years where they made the finals in recent years, it's not like they were the 1 or 2 seed coming out of the East.
No, I mean, this is a team that kind of lives in that underdog mentality. we saw last year with their run was kind of that signature Heat run.
Yep.
They came out as the 8 seed and then destroyed the Bucks, kind of exposed them for the world to see, and then just kind of got red hot. And then everyone's like, oh crap. And then they ran into kind of a powerhouse team in the finals, and that was kind of, the steam kind of fell out there. I think their last hurrah was beating the Celtics. They kind of gave it all they had. And then they just, they just didn't exactly, they couldn't keep the wheels moving. So,
and then for the Mavericks, they're still kind of looking for their first notable playoff series win.
So the Mavericks are weird to me because you have a guy like Luka and you have a guy like Kyrie, both proven superstars. But I think people forget that this Mavericks team since the Luka era has kind of just never been built properly.
They've tried different
to like a depth perspective.
Yeah, they've tried different formats and pieces. I mean, they obviously had the Brunson Luka backcourt. They had Kristaps there for a few years. That never worked out. They're kind of just looking for that proper companion. Now they're trying with Kyrie. We'll see if it's going to work. I mean,
I did like the addition. They brought in PJ Washington out of the trade break. I thought that was a great addition. I think Luka needs more guys like that. We've seen even this year a guy like Derek Lively's kind of exploded on the team just a little bit. Kind of a more of a pick and roll type of situation for Luka, since they thought that was going to be the game plan with Kristaps, but it never really ran to fruition. But we're starting to see they're starting to reap the benefits a little bit from this.
And he's got guys like Tim Hardaway, Seth Curry, just proven role players that will do their job.
See, that's what I mean. I think those guys, as much as we consider them good players, it's kind of been the weakness of this team. It's been the depth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about how good Luka and Kyrie are at basketball. It's just a matter of, what's their 3 to 7 guys, who's next in line. And you're like, maybe this team isn't built for playoff success.
Then that leaves the Knicks, I guess the Kings as well. We didn't talk about the Kings yet.
Well, I think the Kings, the Knicks, and the Pelicans are some of the hardest teams to read. And
because you look at their at least for me, this argument. I look at their rosters and nothing really is jumping out to me. They just play good team basketball, and you just never know what we're going to get, especially in the NBA, in such a star-driven league. Yeah, you have these teams. I guess the Knicks. I mean, Jalen Brunson, he was an all-star this year, but compared to these other teams, not really as star-driven. Which in the NBA are past 2 champions. You got to have like that true alpha male. And I don't know if these 3 teams have that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start from the bottom and go up. I think the Kings, the big story there is, De'Aaron Fox has been hurt. I think that's kind of taken this team a step back. I do think that there's potential with the Kings. I just don't know. We kind of saw it last year. They had a really good regular season. It just didn't translate. I think I like the Fox and Sabonis dynamic. I just think they need another guy. I kind of see Sabonis as a better third option than a second option. And I wonder if that's going to be the missing piece for this team. But I do like the Kings. For the Knicks, I think, as you talked about, Jalen Brunson is for real. Yeah. And as we talked about the Mavs, there's probably a little bit of regret there because, even I was skeptical of the Jalen Brunson when he had that huge playoff. Wasn't he kind of exploded into the playoffs a little bit?
Yeah, I think he had like a 40 piece, if I remember, for one game.
So he kind of exploded into the playoffs. And even I was skeptical of like, man, hey, this guy was nothing until this playoff series, kind of had one good playoff series, and now we're ready to pay him all this money. I was skeptical. So I'll be honest.
I was as well.
So he's kind of proven everyone wrong, including the Mavericks, and he's exploded. I think the big thing for the Knicks is we kind of saw a step back this year with Julius Randle.
Yep.
And
and again, Knicks are a team that's really fighting the injury bug, maybe more than anybody else. I mean, the Knicks, look at their roster, so many injuries. Well-timed All-Star break for them.
I did like the move. I think I liked the move they did with the Raptors, trading away RJ Barrett, getting OG Anunoby. I think it kind of switched their dynamic up a little bit. They needed more of that big man presence, kind of a second guy to go with Julius Randle. So I thought that was a good move, kind of switch the culture up maybe a little bit. And then the Pelicans are just weird.
I mean, it's such a weird team. You got, Zion, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. I may be wrong on this. I just feel like they have the talent. I just don't know if those pieces really complement each other all that well.
Well, I think for me is none of those guys are superstars. And that's no disrespect to any of them, but none of those guys, in my opinion, are number one options. They shouldn't be.
And then you look at the bench. I mean, outside those 3 guys, I mean, in terms of bench, their bench is a lot more lacking compared to some of these other teams. And again, I think they were hoping for more development out of Zion and Brandon Ingram, which again, far from a bust. Yeah, but I think they're hoping for a bit more star power.
You know what? I'm going to say it. I think Zion's a bust.
Wow. I mean, he was hyped up as like to be one of the best.
Well, let me say this. People forget.
Well, we're going full screen for this. One.
Okay. People forget, but before Wembanyama, Zion was the most hyped up prospect since LeBron James.
I mean, I'm a Carolina fan, so I mean, I dread him being a Duke.
But he was that guy. I mean, we had world tours for this guy. He was going to arenas, and people were selling out college arenas to go see Zion Williamson dunk a basketball.
He was like the main player that said, "Okay, NIL needs to happen." A lot of people forget about that. When Zion was in college, you're like, okay, guy of this stature, I mean, he needs to be getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, he was that guy. He was one of the rare prospects in pro sports that we're doing a lottery for who gets the privilege to draft this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it was massive news when people found out the Pelicans were winning the lottery.
And then there's the dieting and the conditioning issues that he's had.
Yeah, so that was where I was going with this. Is he got drafted to be this big prospect, and immediately coming out of it wasn't prepared. He kind of had those injury bugs, and then he ended up debuting midway through the season because he had like an injury happen, and then there was already questions of his
work ethic.
physique, work ethic, all these things, and he just never blossomed into the player he should have been. I mean, he's a freak athlete when he's properly conditioned. I mean, you go watch his high school and college tapes. I mean,
it's crazy.
He's a freak athlete. It just never translated, and that's kind of been the story of this team. I mean, imagine if Zion was the superstar he's supposed to be. This team might be one of the best teams in the league.
I mean, they're probably up there with these guys.
Yeah. I mean, they probably would be in a tier 2, but they're just not. They're just not.
So that leads us to tier 4. Tier 4, then we'll go to tier 5 here in a minute. But for these two tiers, I mean, there's not really as much.
I mean, we had to put it on here. Yeah.
We're cracking a speed through these if we're being honest.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's a couple teams that stick out. The one that really sticks out in this bunch is the Magic.
Yep.
Because the Magic, you look at the standings, I think you have them pulled up.
They're the 7th seed in the East, so they still have a chance at perhaps not even being
they're a winning basketball team. They're a winning basketball team. I think they have the best record out of all these squads that we're looking at right now. I mean, if you looked at the standings, they're still a decent team, and it just doesn't really align to what you say about this Magic team, because you're like,
well, I think it's for the first time for at least they finally have like a clear direction that they're going for. There were so many years where the Magic were just lost.
I will say this team, I think next year they might have a chance to move up to that tier 3. I think maybe you give another year this system, add another piece there, add another, maybe a couple more pieces, and you start.
Paul Banchero, I mean, he's turned out to be a great draft pick.
Yeah, again, another second year that guy had.
Another first time All-Star was averaging. He's leading his team in all major categories. 23 points again. Reading this off my phone here. 7 rebounds, 5 assists. The only thing's not leading his team in is his steals. I mean, it's kind of like the LeBron Cavs, where it's like his face for each leading category. He's really taking this team under his belt, and they can just give him some pieces to work with, which they have some developing pieces. You have Suggs, you have Anthony, you have Carter Jr. You have some decent guys who are young who, if they can take that next step, if they can get that second, third guy, they might have a chance to make some noise.
Yeah, like I said, I like where this team's headed. They're just not there yet, but they're also not in the category to be like, hey, they're there. They're a couple steps away, but I see the direction. And I think I can say the same thing about the Rockets. I think I kind of see where they're going.
I think those are 2 teams that have a clear direction. These other teams, I mean, the Hawks, I mean, they with that signing.
The Hawks is probably the one team that I question in this bunch,
because they had that lethal backcourt of Young and Murray that was supposed to pave the way for them. It just has really never worked. And out there at the point, both those guys are pretty much at the entering or at the prime of their careers, and they still have not even really gotten even close yet to where they want to be.
No.
And you look at the Nets, they've had to blow everything up. They're kind of just been no man's land. Mikal Bridges is a great young guy.
I really thought this Nets team was going to be better.
Are you expecting they'd be maybe
because we kind of saw it last year when they traded for Mikal Bridges and kind of went on that weird little run at the end of the season. I think they won a couple playoff games last year. They didn't win a series, but I think they play your Sixers.
Yes, they did.
And it was a good series.
Yeah, it was fun.
I mean, they gave it a shot. So, that team was built for success. I thought they were going to get better with the new coaching staff, and it never happened. I don't know.
And I think the Raptors and Jazz are just more teams that are kind of just in a clear kind of rebuilding phase.
Yeah, they're rebuilding, but they're also not terrible.
Yeah.
But they're clearly rebuilding. I mean, especially the Jazz, especially in my eyes, you're kind of on the back end of that Donovan Mitchell era, and you're like, they need to find a new direction. I think you started to see some pieces develop with marketing kind of being an unsung hero, but they still got a ways to go.
And then we had some
stinkers.
The stinkers. Now, because these teams have a clear direction, and some of these teams are just lost. Like you look at the Spurs compared to the Wizards. At least the Spurs, you see the pieces, but the Wizards, I mean,
where do they go?
I mean, Jordan Poole was supposed to be a big investment for them, and he's gotten bench. I saw a post on Instagram where he's gotten bench. The Grizzlies, I mean, that's a bit more warranted. Your star player gets hurt.
Well, here's a funny thing. What, a year or two ago, weren't the Grizzlies like a top 3 seed and they went?
Yeah, they were hosting playoff games. I remember, yeah.
I mean, this Grizzly team had the makings. I think the big thing is how much John Morant means to this team. And I think we've kind of seen a step back taken from Jaren Jackson. And those have been kind of the 2 big things. And all of a sudden, this team is in the bottom of the barrel.
Yep. And then the Hornets, I mean, they got in the middle of the ball. But again,
he can't stay healthy.
He can't stay healthy, and they can't find pieces around that are sustainable.
Well, for me, it's more about him staying healthy, but you are right. Even when he is healthy, they've kind of been on that play-in cusp. area, but then losing Lamella has put them into the stinkers.
Again, we already talked about the Spurs. I mean, Trailblazers, again, just trying to get away from that Dame Lillard era, trying to start some new. Scoot Henderson, great potential there as a prospect.
He's going to take a couple years, though.
Yeah, he's a developmental player, but again, just there's a trying to rebuild. It takes time in the NBA for rebuilds. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of these teams are just waiting for the pieces to fall right now.
Yeah, they are, and the Trailblazers are a good example of that. Like we said, they're we knew the growing pains of the post Dame Lillard era would be drastic, and they've been probably more drastic than even probably most would imagine. But I mean, this team is clearly in a rebuilding era, but nothing gets worse than the Pistons.
Yeah, we saved the best for last, or maybe the worst for last. I mean, the Pistons, man, it's just been tough. And you look at the thing for the Pistons is, I feel like they had the potential to be way better than what they are, at least from a roster standpoint.
I've said this before. I really had hopes for this Pistons team. You're gonna laugh at me. Maybe I'll get roasted. You can full screen this one again.
This is gonna be full screen worthy.
I actually, before the season started, I had said that I thought the Pistons were going to be a sneaky plan.
That's not a terrible take because playing team, you got to be 10th in your conference. I would laugh you for that. I mean,
I thought they were going to be around the 10-7 range. I thought this team had potential. I think you look at it from the roster, you're like, it kind of confuses you because they're not. Cade said it best before, and we can talk about Cade Cunningham in a moment, but they're bad, but not this bad. I mean, they're not as bad as what the record said. I mean, you have
players like Alec Burks, Marvin Bagley, Cade Cunningham, Bogdanovich. I mean, again, solid.
Jalen Duran's been really impressive for that team too.
Yeah, Jane Ivey. There's so many young pieces,
and they're coached by a guy that was coach of the year about 2 years ago, and it just makes you wonder, like, what's going wrong?
Like, you look at the Pistons roster in terms of potential, and compared to a team like the Thunders, it's pretty similar in terms of the potential talent that's there. Those teams are like night and day different.
Yeah. I feel like this Pistons team or the Thunder are what I want the Pistons to be. Like they're what the Pistons are in my eyes.
Yeah,
they're just not there. Like they're what I want them to be. But it just hasn't happened, and it's kind of sad because I don't know where they go from here. And now we got people asking for Monty Williams' job, and we're in the first year of this thing.
Yeah, and it's a tough time in Detroit.
Very tough.
I mean, at least the Lions finally gave them something to cheer about. So, I mean, thank goodness the Lions are picking up the slack right now. Because
thank God for Dan Campbell.
Thank God, yeah. In short, thank God for Dan Campbell. Then the last slide we wanted to talk about some key players to watch that maybe are not household names, I think is what we were going for.
Well, they're starting to become
household names, but far from like your LeBrons or Kevin Durant's. I think these are guys that if these are all teams that were in our top 2 tiers, I think.
Most of them are in the
top three.
They're 2 and 3 tiers. I think the big thing for me with these guys is these are the guys that if they're playing their best basketball can move a team up, but if they're playing their worst basketball can easily break their team.
Yep. And so let's just start with Tyrese Haliburton. I think he's the most prominent, maybe outside of Shea, of what you just said. When Tyrese Haliburton's on, I mean, how many times do we see the Bucks get knocked down by the Pacers almost single-handedly because of Tyrese Haliburton?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's been electric. One of the most enjoyable players to watch.
And such a likable guy.
Yeah, he's just a good guy, fun guy to watch. I mean, he's doing crazy stuff out there. He's throwing basketballs off the backboard, passing to his teammates. He's just doing crazy stuff. What a prospect this guy's really blossomed into. I think we saw the potential the first few years in Sacramento, which is kind of, how that whole Sabonis trade happened. You saw the fruitions of maybe a superstar, and the Kings saw it as a chance of, we need a guy right now. I think one of those rare win-win trades as we go back to. It's kind of worked out for both sides. Maybe arguably the Pacers a little bit more, seeing how things have gone and maybe a little bit of a underlying success for that Kings team. But Tyrese Haliburton's the real deal. I mean, this guy is electric.
And let's just go around to Shea because he's the real deal as well. I think Shea single-handedly could be any team on his own any given night. We see it time and time again. A guy averaging 31.1 points a game with the amount of young star power on that team, for him to be doing this at the age he's at, he can take over a game like that. And he's really developed, like you said. When he was a Clipper, the big thing was his shooting. He was more just that explosive driver that you knew if he could develop a shot, he'd be a problem. Well, look, the kid's developed a shot now. Look what he's doing. Yeah,
I mean, it's sad. It's the sad truth. Or maybe it's not a sad truth, but the realistic situation is in the modern NBA, you got to shoot the 3 ball.
Yeah,
and we're seeing.
Where's Ben Simmons when you need him?
I mean, you're seeing the most improbable guys learn a 3-point shot at least at some capacity. I mean, take a guy like Giannis, for example.
Yeah.
Who he's not lighting it up every night from 3-point range, but he realized
he will make 1 or 2 a game.
Yeah, and he realized that you had to, because it's the modern NBA. You need a guy that you at least got to give the opposing defense a thought of it, because it opens up every other aspect of your game. And props to Shea for developing his shot and just becoming. I think the big thing is he's just maturing, and obviously that's natural with being in the league. But this guy's just becoming a polished player for the league, and he's gonna be a player probably for the next decade of just pure dominance.
Well, talking about maturing, I think Jalen Brunson is the definition of maturing. This is a guy that really went from role player to star in the blink of an eye.
And he's handled it well.
He's handled it very well, especially under the bright lights of New York. I mean, you look at Knicks fans, passionate. They're just looking for something to hold their breath to. And finally, for the first time forever, you could say it was Julius Randle, but I think it's more Jalen Brunson finally giving Knicks fans something to be excited about from New York Knicks basketball.
I mean, he's the guy in New York right now. Like you talked about, I think a year or two ago when they were making the run, I think kind of people maybe saw Randle as 1 and Brunson as 2 still, which still goes to show how much people count out this guy. But it's Brunson's team, in my opinion. I mean, he's the top guy right now. They're going to live and die by Jalen Brunson, and rightfully so.
I think Tyrese Maxey's kind of in a different situation where he's a player to watch just because the Sixers really don't have a choice. If they want a chance to have a liquid chance of winning a title, Tyrese Maxey is going to have to go from being 1B on this team to becoming a superstar, because even being a star isn't cutting it for the Sixers right now. I mean, just the other night, it was very inefficient, but he had like almost a 40-piece against the Raptors, and it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to have to start playing the best basketball of his young career for the Sixers to even make it to the postseason, because with the trend they're on right now, the Sixers might be a play-in team, and then it's just a best of 1. Anything can happen then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Tyrese Maxey can take it to another level, that's going to give the Sixers life. But really, I mean, I really feel like the state of the Sixers season is kind of in his hands, because we see it time and time again with Tobias Harris, where he's just unreliable as a proven scorer, as a top 2 option.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an unfortunate situation. I kind of feel for the guy, because he's kind of embraced this second option role of, and he's playing. He's one of the best second options in the league right now. We've seen him really explode onto the scene this year. Did he make the All-Star team?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so first time All-Star, I believe, just kind of exploded onto the scene. He's kind of arguably one of the most improved players this year, and he's been great. And then all of a sudden, his star player, kind of the
franchise,
franchise goes down with a potential season-ending injury, and now it's his team.
And that's the problem. That's such a different scheme, running an offense through Embiid, a center, change it to run a scheme through your point guard Maxey. Yeah. That's changing pretty much your entire scheme. So it's tough.
Well, and that's the thing. I think the All-Star break was kind of a blessing for them to come into the All-Star break, maybe let Nick Nurse kind of, readjust a little bit, see where this team goes. And I don't know. I mean, I think he can do it. I'm hanging on. I don't know if I doubt Maxey. I think he's going to have to embrace, though, getting his teammates involved. And whether or not it sinks or swings them, he's going to have to realize that, like, I'm going to put up probably 25 to 30 a night, but
what good is that going to do me if Tobias,
I need to get my guys
Lowry,
involved. You're going to need guys like Tobias Harris to step up, even a guy like Marcus Morris to step up.
Well, he's not on the team anymore.
Is he not? Oh, okay. So Buddy Hield is a perfect example. Buddy Hield's going to have to step up. I mean, guys that can spot up, shoot the basketball, and do it efficiently are going to be what needs help.
Batum is our guy that comes to mind, where you never really know.
Is he on the team still?
Yeah, he's still rocking with us, former Clippers.
Hey,
legend.
Yeah, Nick Batum. Hey, but good example of guys that they can spot up, and they're going to have to hit at an efficient rate, because as much as Maxey can do it, he can't do it all.
Yeah, he can't do it all, but I like this. This is a bit different from the football show. Get a bit more going in depth with.
Hey, we're not done with this. Hey, we were just talking about this before the show. Like, this is just the start of this. I know we'll probably end up doing some more NBA talk down the line. I mean, we'll probably take
down
a break.
The bottom line.
Oh, there you go. We'll take a break from this for a couple weeks, but coming up, it's March Madness, one of our favorite times of the year. And then after March Madness,
little bracket breakdown.
Yeah, we'll do a bracket breakdown. I'm down, and then we'll probably tap into the NFL draft a little bit, and then free agency for the NFL, and then hey, baseball's starting soon too. I mean, there's in the sports world, there's never a time off, and that's why we love it, and that's why we get on the show every week.
Yeah, we love talking sports. Feel good about talking NBA again. I know football is our main thing. We'll probably have football back, probably always next show, because again, we want to take one show, just take a little break from football, just put it in the rear view, just talk about basketball. We haven't really talked a whole lot basketball, so it felt good to talk a little bit of hoops. But again, there's so much stuff coming up. March Madness, even hockey. I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs are coming before us. We're more maybe casual hockey fans, but
I'll talk about
nothing beats playoff hockey.
No, nothing beats it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. As much as, hey, maybe these things aren't our main things, but we still enjoy talking about them, and I hope other people do too.
Yeah, so that's going to cut for the bottom line this week. We hope you guys enjoyed. Again, check out all of our social channels for more clips, updates, all that good stuff. But for now, he's Ben Woolley. I'm Jude Razio. We'll catch you next week.